So I kind of gave up with writing, but I really loved narratives and like just the idea of like writing narratives and telling stories.
Hmm.
So when I started getting into composition a little bit with the support of my piano teacher through like our theory method books, we I like had a five measure chord progression that I was supposed to write a melody for. And then I wrote it and I really liked it. And I was like, I want to hear more than five measures of this. So then it turned into a 5 minute piece instead of a five measure piece. And I basically just kept going from there and had a lot of support from my teachers.
Composition? Do
So
you try things on viola or do you compose at the piano?
yeah, I think I do some of both, kind of depending on the piece. Like especially when I'm writing four strings, like of course I'll try things out in viola because then I get a better sense of what's idiomatic and what's not. And like some of that is just like I know that mentally, but I really like improvising on viola for like more gestural things. When I'm wanting to hear like more harmonic layers instead of like linear layers, I will play some things on piano because it's a little bit harder to play chords on viola. Usually, like I haven't in the past had a lot of experience writing for instruments that require breathing to make the sound. Because I'm a string player, so I've done a lot of string things in piano. So I was thinking a lot about that breath and wanting to explore that as an opportunity to use like as an integral part of it beyond just like, oh well, breath makes the sound. Which is why in the score like there's actually notated breathing and breath sounds outside of just your typical flute sound. So I kind of used that as a framework for what kind of sounds I wanted to explore, since I had the opportunity to work with flute, which is not something I had done before. And then I was also thinking about a poem that I had seen when I was in the subways in New York City for Mata Junior Festival in 2018, which is by Jean Valentine. And it's titled My Words to You. And it ends, it's a super concise poem, and I thought that was really interesting how much it said in such a concise amount of time. And of course, for Curtis Summerfest, they had like a time limit on how long your piece could be. It wasn't quite a miniature as much as like this poem is super tiny and compact. But I was curious and very intrigued by that. And so I was thinking about like how much weight is on every word in such a concise poem. And then I was like, well, what happens if you take out one of those words and replace it with something, since each one of these words has so much impact on like the whole poem, since there's not that many words in it. So I replaced the word love with breath, and that kind of changed the whole narrative of the poem to me, um, because then it was no longer about like trying to keep like love with you or trying to keep a loved one with you. It was about trying to keep your breath, and that offers like a new sort of struggle. And not only within like the political context of last summer with the protests of police brutality, um, but also with like my own personal anxiety struggles and like panic attacks, where like at least for me, like that can involve a lot of struggles with breathing. Um, that was something that I was thinking a lot about when writing the piece, since there was that breath element and then the weight of each word in the poem.
Well, one thing in your piece, a lot of it feels kind of abstract, and there's maybe shorter fragments and then some silence in different moods, either kind of increasing or decreasing in momentum or intensity. And then there's some sections that are much more extended and longer, and that I would be playing, or you're having the flutist play for kind of a more extended development part. What were you thinking about in terms of the timing of that in your piece and the overall shape of it?
Yeah, I think for that it like mostly just comes intuitively, and I try not to think too much like consciously about it because I like a lot of my improvisatory style is more gestural and more fragmented. So I have a harder time with extended passages sometimes. Um, yeah, so I think a lot of that, like the kind of rapid running passage, that
Mhm.
was just something that I felt like it needed intuitively, and that's something that I didn't end up improvising. I just had to like think through it, because yeah, that comes a little bit less intuitively. Like it comes intuitively that I'll need it. Like I can identify that I'll need it, but I have a harder time like improvising it out, if that makes sense. Like I think I was drawing like the line, like the shape of the line that I wanted, but I had a harder time like finding the notes without being very specific about it.